Today, I'm really excited to talk to my old friend Drew Miller. Drew and I used to be colleagues about 25 years ago, and he's a very, very interesting guy. He's a very educated guy. It's Dr. Drew Miller, retired Colonel Drew Miller. So here's a man that has got a lot of experience when it comes to kind of our March theme, and that is of survival. And Drew has. I'm going to let Drew describe what he does because I'm afraid I might screw it up. But the best way I could see it, Drew, is that you are a survivalist. You are prepared for doomsday. I don't know what a better word than that, to doomsday, and that you have very actively created Fortitude Ranches where people can go. So I'm gonna shut up and you tell me what the Fortitude Ranch is and what inspired you to start it.
Well, thank you, Sam. And at some point, I want to talk about your reserve police officer experience because that's something I really recommend. There aren't enough of them. But I was an intelligence officer in the Air Force. Mainly, I was guard and reserve rather than active duty, but did all three. And as an intelligence officer, I was aware of the threats. And people assumed that when the Soviet Union fell, oh, we had this big peace dividend. Threats are over. We're not going to have a big nuclear war, any big disaster. And it's just the opposite. The probability of a collapse is bad, and it gets worse every year. And what's driving it is new technologies. And I should define what I mean by a collapse. When I say a collapse, I mean two things, really. Number one is the economy's not functioning. People aren't going to work. Economy's not functioning, which means there's no food distribution. And so that leads to the second thing, law and order breaks down, widespread for a long period of time. So, for example, H5N1, don't call it bird flu or avian flu anymore. It's spreading in 50 different mammal populations around the world. And it's inevitable. It will be human contagious. Right now, H5N1 has historically been about 50 to 60% lethal. So it's not going to be like COVID-19. It'll be a horrible pandemic. The virus might directly kill 1 billion people, but more people will die from starvation and being killed by marauders because starving to death is not a good way to go. And so most people go out to try to steal food, no marauders, people will kill for it. So that's our future. And there's so many threats that could lead to a collapse that I formed Fortitude Ranch as a survival community. So I used to be a prepper. I was in Nebraska. I had a remote place in Colorado in the mountains. I was going to go there and survive on my own. And that's what most preppers do. They kind of have a remote place to go to, a bug out location, and they're going to survive on their own. The problem is, if you really think it through, in a way, you almost made yourself worse off, because if you stockpile a lot of food and supplies, you become a target, an attractive target for a marauder group. So unless you can defend it, which means a lot of people with weapons, and in our case, we go beyond that. We have defensive walls, guard posts. I mean, we're really well prepared, designed to defeat and deter a marauder attack. So as I was looking at it, I said, I've got to have a survival community. I looked into survival communities, and they've been around forever. The problem is they're almost always voluntary, and they fall apart. You can't get, 50 we try to get 100 plus people at all our Fortitude Ranch locations. And you can't get that many people together voluntarily and agree on stuff. So it's fighting and they fall apart. And I found that out because I checked into joining several and I find out they don't exist anymore. And especially now that I've got Fortitude Ranch and we're franchising, we get calls and emails from people saying, hey, I've got this fantastic survival facility for you in North Carolina. It's all set to go. And I said, well, why are you selling it? And he says, well, we had a survival group. It fell apart, and I'm the poor schmuck who was stuck with the mortgage liability, and I'm desperate to sell it. So we formed Fortitude Ranch as a business to be a survival community. So we say we have a country club membership model. It's like joining a country club. There's an upfront fee to join, and then quarterly dues and an annual food restocking fee. But we're in charge. That's why I'm wearing a Fortitude Ranch uniform. And when I say we're overwhelmingly former military folks that run Fortitude Ranch, are largely veteran-owned and operated.
That run it.
Correct. And so ranch managers are folks like me in uniform. And we have assistant ranch managers as well. Most of them are military too. And in a collapse, well, in peacetime we run it. So we're a farm, we're a ranch. We have chickens and other sheep and other animals depending on the location. And then we have garden, and we stockpile food like every prepper does, but we also have stockpile seeds because, well, for example, when the grid goes down, and our electric grid is highly vulnerable, when the grid goes down, this isn't my estimate, this is the estimate of official studies. When the electric grid goes down, and North Korea could take down our grid, China, just with agents in the country doing physical attacks, and those drone sightings over the past year, I'm pretty convinced that a lot of that was Chinese front companies. China is the leader in air taxi drones. They've got companies in the U.S. That's probably the front company they're using for their agents here. There's at least 1,000 Chinese agents in the U.S. And so I believe they weren't just going after military bases. They were also reconnoitering, planning routes to electric grids and vulnerable spots on the grid. And so they could take down the electric grid, but I'm getting off track. The reason that's important is when the grid goes down from an attack like that, it's not down for weeks or even months. It's down for a year or years to get it back. When you blow up those transformers, those things are huge. We don't generally produce them in the U.S. And the official estimate of the congressionally funded EMP Commission, experts who studied our electric grid, they concluded, Sam, that if the grid is taken down in a massive way, it would kill up to 90% of the U.S. population because there's no food production and there's no water system. I mean, you're in Omaha, Nebraska. The Omaha municipal water system does not function without electricity to pump water.
Well, we have a generation. It's my biggest concern, Drew, and I think it's the easiest target is the electrical grid.
It is.
If you're really going to do a terrorist attack, take out electricity. Why? Because we have a generation of people that live on these. And the second you can't charge these, what are those folks going to do? Talk about dying. They don't have any survival skills or it'll be a mess. They'll be part of the marauders or whatever.
Well, it's much worse than that, Sam, because, and this is why China is so important with their 1,000 agents that's estimated to be in the U.S. is they want to take Taiwan. We still have the Formosa Declaration from the 1950s authorizing the president to defend Taiwan. It's not a good move for the U.S., but we've got that. We're tied up saying that we're going to defend Taiwan. We're dependent on their computer chips today as well. But if China wants to take Taiwan, well, China does want to take Taiwan. They've announced it for over 50 years. It's their territory. They are going to take it. They will go to war if they have to. So rather than doing a nuclear war with the U.S. to force us to back down from Taiwan, all they have to do is take down our electric grid because it doesn't just screw all of us starving to death. When you take down the electric grid, you've just disabled the U.S. military. There is no military electric grid. Military bases off at Air Force Base near you in Nebraska runs on the civilian municipal power grid. When you take that down, you've just disarmed the United States of America. Now, off it's actually a bad example because you got STRATCOM there. STRATCOM does have a lot more power generation because that's our strategic nuclear forces. But even so, they don't have generator fuel to run forever. And when you take down the electric grid, you'll kill most U.S. citizens, and you've just instantly disabled the U.S. military. So China can take Taiwan by taking down our electric grid, and North Korea can also take down our electric grid, not with agents. They've got agents. But North Korea has a nuclear force that we know. I'm not giving away secret information. This is open source. But North Korea's nuclear weapons force, their ICBMs, were designed, and their nuclear weapons were designed with aid from Russia. And they were optimized to have EMP effect, electromagnetic pulse. You can produce thermal radiation, blast. There's a lot of different effects from nuclear weapons, but you can tweak what you put most of your power in. And their weapons are optimized to produce electromagnetic pulse, which is the best way there is to quickly destroy an electric system like ours. And when that happens, again, it's up to 90% of the population's gone, the U.S. military's gone.
So I think this begs the question, your Fortitude Ranches are equipped to deal with electric grid, no more electricity. What specifically, how would you handle that? I mean, I look at it from the standpoint of you've got to teach some folks some skills that they might not have. It could range everything from self-defense to how to fish, how to hunt. How are you equipped to deal with specifically with no electrical grid and obviously food?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Well, we're designed to operate without needing electricity. So our major energy source is wood stoves. That's what we use. That's for heating and cooking. That's where most of your energy needs go. So we don't need electricity. We do have solar systems. We do have propane generators and gas generators, diesel generators at some places. But if everything fails in terms of solar and propane generators and all that, we're not going to lose any lives from that. We don't have to have electricity. We've got handheld radios for guards. Those, it's nice to be able to charge them. But even though we've got big solar systems, we've got smaller systems too. We have RV systems. We'll be able to keep those batteries charged. But other than that, we are just designed to operate without any need for electricity. And Fortitude Ranch in Nevada is actually completely off grid. They're without electric grid power all the time.
right now.
The only thing they have is solar power and propane generators, gas generators, and then they're also adding a wind generator out there. But it's not hard for us to operate because, again, we're doing ranching and gardening, and we're manning our guard posts. You don't need electricity to do those things.
Right. What kind of folks are your members? I mean, you said that a lot of military folks are running the organizational structure, but who are the members? Are there people that uh, are they also retired military? Do they have some skills, or do you have people that have zero skills whatsoever?
We have the full range. So we have a lot of both military officers and then former intelligence officers, and some are still in. Some are still serving. We have people in Homeland Security and in some intelligence agencies in our membership. And that's mainly because we're aware of the threats. We don't buy the lie that, oh, government will take care of you. Don't worry, just they'll bring you food. We know better than that. So they tend to be, we tend to have a lot of military and former intelligence community officers, but we have professionals, people of all walks of life. We have elderly folks. Everyone will do guard duty. It's just that if you've got great military skills for a guard, good hunting, shooting skills, you'll be a guard on a shift that's more likely to have a marauder come at them and probably at night. If you have really bad military skills, we're still going to put you on guard duty, but you'll probably be on a less important guard post during the day when there's 30 people out there farming, and you could say, well, I don't really need a guard on duty. But we man our guard posts in a collapse 24/7. Everyone's manned all the time, and the reason is we don't want to get in a fight with marauders because a wound in a collapse with no hospital operating, you're going to be in bad shape. Yeah, we stockpile antibiotics. We got medical staff and our members, but you don't want to get wounded. So our policy is when you're outside as a Fortitude Ranch member in a collapse, you must have your weapon with you. Guard posts are manned, every one of them, all the time. And the reason is marauders aren't just going to come blundering in and attack you. They're going to look at you. They're going to scout you out, figure out, hey, is this a place that's worth attacking? How would I do it? Can I succeed? And we want the observers of the scouts or the marauder groups to go back and say, holy crap, they got over 100 people there. Every one of those SOBs is armed. They got at least 6 guard posts that I can see. They're manned all the time. They've cut down the trees. They have cleared lines of fire. They're stacked into walls. We get slaughtered trying to attack them, and then they won't attack us. So go after easy targets.
So I think about my sister. I actually have a personal plan if all this hits the fan. I grew up in a ranch in western Nebraska, and there is a place that we have it's on a river and big tall hills. I can see people coming from hundreds of miles. Well, I'm exaggerating, but 20 miles away I can see them. So that's my plan. And my brother has a friend of mine who is a survivalist who could give the guy a scoop shovel or a spade shovel and a bow and arrow. He can survive. And he's asked to be there, so he'll be there, I hope. But my sister says, kind of jokingly, to my brother, we'll be coming, but we're always hungry and we have no skills. So I guess again, what do you train people right now to have some of these skills, or do you have programs in place for the minute it happens, or what what are you doing to take into consideration people like my sister who's always hungry and has no skills?
Yeah. Well, we do training, but by and large, it's the fact that our staff knows what to do. So, taking care of chickens is awful simple to do. And what you need to know, we can train additional folks in a collapse. And then mostly we're going to be gardening. If you want most calories per acre, it's not from cattle or sheep, it's from farming. And when I say farming, I'm not talking about tomatoes and lettuce. I'm talking about the three staples: Jerusalem artichoke, potatoes, white potatoes or sweet potatoes, and then corn. You're in Nebraska and you know the importance of corn. And then when I say corn, I'm not talking about the corn you eat, the sweet corn. I'm talking about the stuff that's hybrid, that's high calories, that's made into feed, ground up into cornmeal, very high calories.
Where are you getting
that's what we grow.
Your proteins you're getting from chickens, and I assume some of these places have deer populations and
Yep. So we'll be hunting, although I think the hunting is going to be over in the first weeks or months, because everyone's going to be hunting. We tell people when the collapse starts, we're chopping down trees to clear lines of fire. We're also shooting any edible creature in sight. We're shooting and making them into jerky. So stuff's going to get hunted out pretty fast. But the problem you've got with a rural location anywhere, Nebraska, anywhere, is that you may be rural now, but in a collapse, people are going to leave Omaha, Kansas City, Chicago, Denver, all the big cities and the metropolitan suburb areas. You can't survive there. You just cannot.
Yeah.
So you're going to head out into the countryside. So you're going to have marauder groups forming and people coming, and it's just really hard to keep a lot of guards on duty. 2 guards on duty just is not enough. If you've got only 2 guards on duty at night, that means, Sam, that you and I can take out a group. So if you got 25 people in your rural farm area and you got 2 guards on duty at night, we'll watch you. We'll figure out where your 2 guards. We'll figure out that there's only 2 on duty. And then we'll decide, I think 3 a.m. is the time to do this. So 3 a.m. we come back, the marauder group is ready, although it could be just as small as you and me if we wanted to. And then with walkie-talkies, we just time our shots. You got your guard? Yep, he's in sight. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're marauders now, not Fortitude Ranch. We both shoot at the same time, and we've just shot your guards from a distance. So inside, someone might hear a shot, but the tendency is at night, if you hear a little noise and you wake up and you don't hear anything else that's quiet, you tend to just fall back asleep. So after shooting and killing your 2 guards, if no one else gets up, wait another 15 minutes. Everyone now is sleeping inside is vulnerable. So if you're lucky, these 2 bad guys are going to go in and just steal some stuff. If you're unlucky, they'll go from room to room, knifing people and take everything there. So
I'm here.
But to keep, so you got to keep, we have, our goal is 6 or more guards at night, plus a roving ranch manager, staff member like myself. So you can't, shoot out our guards at any time. But to do that, you're talking about a minimum of 50 people to have a viable survival committee. So doing it on your own, I'm not discouraging it. Any preparation is great. And the collapse might not last that long. It might not last for more than a month or 2. You might get lucky and might not have a big marauder group in your area. But if it goes long term, if the grid goes down, if it's a pandemic, by the 2018 pandemic, don't call it the 2018 pandemic. It ran for over a year. That pandemic that had a 1.5% lethality rate, killed about 100 million people worldwide. But a pandemic's going to last a long time. Not most, but a lot of collapses could last for months to over years. And at that point, it's guaranteed you're going to have big marauder groups in your area. And so you want to have a lot of guards on duty, lots of armed members, so they don't mess with you. They go after you, Sam, if it's just you and a small group at your place.
So what are you stockpiling ammunition every year, annually?
Oh, yeah.
You have to.
We stockpile a lot of ammunition, and it's not because I think we're going to be in big gunfights with marauder groups again. I think we'll be successful in deterring attack. But the reason we stockpile lots of ammunition is I believe that is the number one best barter item you can have. It lasts forever. It's easy to carry. It's highly valuable. We're not going to be making any ammunition in a collapse, so people will be hunting. People will be fighting off marauders, and will be very valuable. So, we stockpile a lot of ammo for barter as well as for hunting and defense.
That's interesting. You say that it'll be very valuable. What else will be valuable? Will gold, for instance, be valuable?
I don't back gold as a barter item. I mean, I have no clue what gold is worth. What's the price of gold in a collapse? How do you know? I mean, we've got HF ham radio for communication, but is there going to be a market in gold and tell me the price? I like to have something I can use. I can use my ammo. So I'll give you some other examples. Stockpiled food, canned food, shelf-stable
Sure.
food, hugely valuable for barter, although you may not want to give it away.
And just
Antibiotics, batteries. One other thing that's really good I mentioned is whiskey or alcohol. And the reason for that is not just because people like it, but, I said we've got clinics at Fortitude Ranch. We've got a lot of great doctors, pharmacists, nurses in our staff. We don't have a great system for, and it's not antiseptics, for putting you under to do an operation. Anesthesiology, we don't have that. That's just too expensive, too much red tape, government regulations, and then shelf life. So if we have to operate on someone, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to get you drunk. So that's the other reason.
Civil War techniques.
Yeah, exactly right.
Hacksaws.
We do have bone saws at our locations, but again, our goal is to not get in a marauder fight. So with cleared lines of fire, 100+ armed members, guard posts, professional people running the guard shift, we don't think we'll ever get in a guard fight. So our operation should be, hey, a piece of wood fell on me and I've got, a broken arm or something. They shouldn't be that bad.
So can you define for me stockpiled food? I mean, what are we talking about? Like cans of, I'm thinking cans of black beans. I mean, or what does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, let me plug a Nebraska company that we use. It's called Pleasant Hill Grains, and I'm name blanking on the small town, but it's not Omar Lincoln. It's a small town, Nebraska, Pleasant Hill Grains. So they have the big buckets of wheat berries, different types of grain. The shelf life they put on it is like 10 years. That's not true. I used to work at ConAgra back when it was in Omaha. So I've been in the food industry, and I can tell you that the expiration dates on shelf-stable food is just absolute nonsense. It goes way beyond that. The expiration date on a can or a tub of grain. We do SOS Food Lab bars too, for example, and they'll say it's 10 years. It's more like 30, 40, 50 years, and the reason is the shelf life that a manufacturer puts on has to assume that you're going to buy the food at the grocery store, put it in your car, and now I'm going to bake it at 120 degrees for hours. Then I'm going to freeze it. Then I'm going to bake it. They tested on huge temperature abuse and a lot of high temperatures. What we do at Fortitude Ranch is we have underground basements. We want it for radiation shielding, but also for storing food. So if you keep your food at a low temperature in a basement, it will last for decades beyond the expiration date. And if it doesn't, if you open up some can and some can for some reason is spoiled, it's not a disaster. We put it outside and make bugs for our chickens to eat.
So grain, you're talking about. I wouldn't know what the hell to do with a bucket of grain, Drew. I don't eat grain.
You just
oatmeal.
You buy a grinder and you grind it up. What do you got? Flour. So you know how to use flour.
Well, I do, but I don't eat flour.
Well, sure. So
I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't survive.
So the main thing we stockpile is wheat berries, rice, flour, sugar to a lesser degree, pinto
rice
beans.
Would be good.
But we got cans of tomatoes, cans of fruit, other stuff as well, and then spices. And then we are going to be, we will keep hunting. We're going to make jerky from our initial stuff, from the initial animals that we kill. So there'll be some meat from that, but there'll be some. And I'll be honest with you, we will eat bugs. Not raw, not gross factor bugs, but
protein.
Not just protein, fantastic protein, and stuff that you really, really need. So it's not going to be gross. When we catch crickets, if we don't want our chickens to get them, and we said, we'd like to have some of that protein. What we'll do is we just cook them. Again, we got wood energy, plenty of energy. Cook them, grind them up, throw them in a stew or chili. You'll have no idea you're eating crickets, but you will be, and they're 1 calories and 2/3 great protein. And then we gather stuff. So it varies by location, but you've got acorns, you've got oak trees in parts of Nebraska. Acorns have to be treated properly. That's again where knowledge comes in. You got to get the tannin out. But prickly pear cactus is edible.
Cactus.
There's
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff around. In West Virginia, we've got a lot of black walnuts out there. So we've got walnuts to eat. So we are foraging, we're gardening, we're hunting. We got stockpiled, and then we have vitamins as well. So the honest answer is I believe the health of our members will improve in a collapse. Most of us could
Well,
afford
there's
to
going to be
lose weight.
a lot more physical activity.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's going to be a lot more walking. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people in this country don't walk. We used to be pedestrian, but we're not.
Right.
And just that alone will offset some of that. Yeah, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of being a 10-year CrossFitter. Like, where in the hell am I going to get my 200 grams of protein? But the body will adjust. I mean,
and pinto beans and rice and wheat, they do have protein in them as well. So our goal is mainly calories. I mean, it's survival, not having a perfectly nutritious, balanced meal. But we will do some gardening of some lettuces and other things with some different proteins and vitamins in there. And then we're developing an aquaponics system at Texas and then Colorado and elsewhere we'll roll it out to have fish. And there you're doing greens with the fish. So there is some variety there, but mainly collapse survival is about calories, which is why corn, potatoes, and Jerusalem artichoke are so good.
Right. We're on video now. I also have, for my non-video listeners, I went like this. I went up on calories. Yes, you're going to need to eat a lot of calories. And so how you get them, it's going to be it'll be different for me. There'll be more carbohydrates, but that's fine.
One other thing I wanted to mention is there's so much to know about prepping. That's why we've got, if you look up here, Collapse Survivor. That is an app, a phone app that we developed several years ago, and it provides prepper education. So there's a whole library there on the website as well as on the app. And then we do training simulations.
It only works when the grid is working, but yes.
Correct. This is for now. This is for right preparations class.
Well, that answers my
question.
And
then we run exercises, training exercises on the app. So you can go there. What would it be like if the grid went down? Well, find out. Get the Collapse Survivor app and play a grid down scenario. We've got several of them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ways to destroy the electric grid. So different scenarios on that. And then it has questions in there like, what is the better crop to develop for you? There's kind of multiple choice questions. You've got a threat. There's a marauder group in your area. They're camped out overnight. What should you do? Should you get with some neighbors and try to attack them during the night? Or should you just keep your defenses manned up and not attack them, use the benefits of defense? There's a lot of training, but it's in a fun way. It's in an exercise. And that's what I used to do as an Air Force intelligence officer. I wrote training exercises. When I was at Offutt Air Force Base, I wrote several scenarios for Giant Drill. It was a command post exercise. And then I also did them for, there I was part of a bigger team when we did them for the annual big, global shield when the world blowed up in nuclear war. I worked on those. So that's kind of modeled on military training exercise simulations. So the Collapse Survivor app is a really, really good way to learn about prepping, improve your education, watch videos. There's a lot of information on it. Then the other business that we've added is we're now consulting to help businesses and organizations survive, because it's not just individuals who are going to die and collapse. When the grid's down for a year or more, my bet is that most companies will not come back. They'll be forever destroyed. Because first of all, a lot of your people, perhaps most of your people, are going to be killed. Secondly, if you've got physical facilities, they're going to be looted. There's no police to protect them, and they sure as hell aren't going to protect a business. They're going to try to prioritize. Well, unfortunately, they prioritize protecting the elected officials and government, but after that, it'll be hospitals and places like that. But the third thing that won't survive is data. Everyone thinks, oh, my cloud storage, everything, all my pictures will be safe. And you're out of your mind. They won't be safe because they're on computers in a data center. Right now, they're safe because they've got, they're in 3 or 4 different locations. But when H5N1 hits, that's a global pandemic all around the world. There'll be marauding and looting. None of those data centers will survive. They'll be destroyed. There'll be no one taking care of them, no electricity whatsoever in there to keep the servers running.
Well, and if you're worried about your damn pictures, you're not going to survive anyway.
Well, it's more than that.
you're going to have to leave everything behind.
It's more than that. I mean, your records, all your records that you back up on film, you'll lose all that. So
It's all
you'll lose
gone.
that.
You're starting
Your
from scratch.
your crypto keys. Well, I don't know. Some of it might. I mean, I don't know. Bitcoin, I don't think will survive a collapse. If the internet's down around the world, there's no people involved whatsoever in Bitcoin. I don't see Bitcoin coming back, but the Ethereum
Well,
blockchain, where a lot of tokens, we have a Fortitude token, it's on the Ethereum blockchain. The Ethereum blockchain could shut down, but it has people involved in it. They could restart it. So I do want to have my crypto keys. And so having data backup is good. So we've just started a collapsed data backup business to help with that. And then I'm doing a lot of consulting now, helping companies and organizations figure out plans because it's not that hard to do. I mean, you can't protect all your facilities. You probably aren't going to protect 100% of your people, but you can make sure that your key people, some of your key assets, and then with this collapsed data backup service we're starting here, their other servers are at Fortitude Ranch. They're underground at Fortitude Ranch. We survive a collapse. Google and all the cloud backup data servers, they're not going to be manned. Bank safety deposit box, they're going to be looted and robbed in a collapse. But since we, Fortitude Ranch, survive, we're adding a collapsed data backup service where you can make sure your data survives.
what kind of businesses will be necessary or will survive? I mean, like, you're not going to need a dry cleaner,
No.
You're not you're not going to need a barber shop. I mean, what are you going to need as far as businesses?
Well, in a collapse, I don't think any business is going to be operating. Hospitals won't even operate. I mean, you see hospitals say, "Oh, we've got our diesel generators." Yeah, you do. And if they run, that's an if. But even if they do run, you got 3 days of fuel for most of them. Then they're gone. And then any kind of company or organization or business, no one's going to come to work in a collapse. You got the marauder threat to worry about getting killed going to work, and you got to stay at home to try to protect your family. So they're just not around. A lot of people doubt our military will be functioning during a collapse. I mean, I was in the military for 30 years, mainly part time. But why did you join the military? To defect our family and our country from foreign threats, overseas. But you assume that if I'm over, I was in Bosnia, I was over in Iraq. You assume when you're over there, your family back home is safe. When your family isn't safe, the biggest threat is marauders attacking your family. A lot of people in the military are going to say, you know what? Not the right situation. I got to go home. I got to stay at home and protect my family. Otherwise, they're going to get killed while I'm fighting overseas.
Ooh, a lot to take in here. Tell me if you, I guess it's public. Can you tell me two things? Can you tell me where your how many Fortitude ranches do you have? Where are they? And tell me what like a shelter design looks like at one of these ranches.
Sure. So we have 8 locations. We're in Maine, West Virginia, New York, Tennessee, Texas, Wisconsin, Colorado, Nevada. I think I got them all. And we're growing via franchising. So if anyone knows, especially if you got like a remote RV park or resort, that's the ideal place to have a Fortitude Ranch. You've already made the investment in land, have a lot of the facilities. So we're 8 locations now, but our goal is to have dozens and then hundreds. And we're raising capital to help provide loans to franchisees to get more locations going. Because right now, I mean, we can't protect even 0.001% of the population. We don't have enough locations to do that. We don't give out our exact locations. We don't depend on a secret location to survive because you can't. If you survive a collapse, sooner or later, a marauder group's going to find you if you're alive. So our defense is based on, being able to protect ourselves and deter or defeat a marauder attack. But our locations are generally in the states you see. If you go to our website, fortranch.com, you'll see a map there, but we don't post, it's north of Lincoln, Nebraska or something like that. We don't do that.
Right. Don't give the street address. Well, there aren't any streets. Don't give the latitude or longitude.
You asked about our shelter design. So yeah. Our philosophy is we're not in deep underground bunkers. We have some shallow shelters. Mainly our underground is just basements. You do want some underground stuff for cooler food storage and in case there's a lot of fallout with the radiation, Earth provides shielding for that. You don't want to be deep underground. The reason is you have to be able to protect yourself on the surface. The major threat you're going to face is marauder groups. So you've got to be on the surface in guard posts and with defensive walls. able to deter and defeat a marauder group. So you don't want to be deep underground. And now, oh, there's a marauder group coming, and you got people trying to, take 5 minutes climbing up from underground to get there. So we don't do deep underground shelters. They're expensive and they're not good for self-defense. And then we like to be spread out. So in a pandemic, if you come to Fortitude Ranch, we're going to have quarantine. We're going to keep you separated until we're sure you don't have the virus before you come inside. But even so, if there's some weird thing where a bird brings in a virus and now it's in this building, we like to keep ourselves spread out so we're less vulnerable to a virus if it does get in. And then secondly, again, we want to be able to defend our walls. So the faster I can get my members to those walls to back up our guards, the better I'll be at deterring or stopping a marauder attack. So we have lots of small buildings spread out is what we do. And we're also offering options now for people to live full time. Normally you're limited to 2 weeks of vacationing at Fortitude Ranch, and that can be any ranch. So, you could join Fortitude Ranch, Colorado, but you could go up to Wisconsin in the summer and spend a week there for your vacation time. And then if you're out in New York City and a pandemic starts and instantly the airline shut down and you don't think you can drive back to Nebraska or to Fort Ranch, Colorado, if that's your home fort, you can go to Fort Ranch, New York or Fort Ranch, Maine, and they'll have you on the member list. They'll take care of you there. So that's why having a system like we've got, it's great for vacationing, but it's especially great because people travel or your daughter may be off to school somewhere. And so you can shelter at any Fortitude Ranch location in a collapse.
So you've obviously thought all these scenarios through, Drew, to a very very impressive level. You've got former military in charge there, and so my biggest curiosity was when you get on, I don't know how many people are going to be at these ranches, 100, 150, whatever. There's going to be an organized structure. Somebody's got to be in charge, right? I mean, what's your plan? What plans are in place for self-governance? Who's in charge?
So we have ranch managers. So we're in charge. And again, we're on the country club model. So it's a business. Members don't own any real estate. They don't have votes on how things go. If it's a long collapse and members say, hey, we'd like to make some changes, our goal is to keep our members alive and happy in a collapse. We'll definitely be organizing clubs and things like that. Some we will sponsor, like we want to have we call it the Reconstitution club that's going to plan on, okay, what do we do after the collapse is over? What's the plans? We don't have all the answers, and depending on how the collapse goes, it's going to vary a lot. So there'll be some things like that we organize, but by and large, our members are going to be allowed on their free time to, do whatever they want, from a religious group meeting, a history book club. But staff is in charge. So we have ranch managers and assistant ranch managers, and that's why we wear the uniform, especially in the initial days, to make it clear, this is the staff member. They're the ones going to be directing you on gardening. And then there's work duties to do as well. So it's not just guard duty. We have big meal to prepare every day. So there's a meal team. There's wood stoves. So there'll be people in charge of getting firewood, keeping the stoves going, that kind of thing.
But what happens if I'm the guy doing all the work, all the shovel work, and my sister's not doing a damn thing, and I'm tired of her, and she's costing us resources. I'm going to take her out. So I take her out. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with me?
Long before you get to that point, we're in charge. The staff are in charge. If someone isn't doing their work, we'll be talking to them and explain to them, hey, Susie Q, you've got to do your work. You missed this shift. You can never miss a guard shift. And we wouldn't. We'd be waking someone up for that. But we would talk to a member who's not behaving better. And then we would just frankly have to tell them, look, Susie, the walls are to keep the bad guys out, not to keep members in. And if you're not doing your work, we could revoke your membership and you'll be dismissed from Fortitude Ranch. You're not going to be harmed by us, but you will be forced out. So I don't think we would ever get to that situation. The caliber of our members is great, and especially in a collapse.
Well, you've read books like
if you get kicked out, that's almost a death sentence.
Yeah,
you're going to be in really bad shape. But I don't think we would have members acting up like that.
You've read books like Lord of the Flies, which I haven't read in years, but those are the kind of scenarios that go through my mind at these things. Like, you've got to have mechanisms in place to deal with that.
Yeah, that's our staff. And then we also have, kind of a morale member who's looking out for people who. My major worry isn't really crime or members acting, but my major worry is members who are going to be just real bad mental health because so and so, a dear friend of them, their husband, whatever, they're wondering about them, and so we'll use our ham radio to try information. But people are going to be upset. And so we're going to have staff assigned dealing with that, making sure they get involved, they talk to people, and take care of mental health.
Some people are paralyzed by fear, Drew, and I almost wonder if some of your members are paralyzed by fear. I mean, are you attracting the wrong people because they are paralyzed by fear? They're joining your group, and now you get them there, and they're going to be worthless to you if they're paralyzed by fear.
No, not paralyzed by fear. We actually have peace of mind because we know we can make it through a collapse. So our members don't have to worry as much. When the H5N1 pandemic starts, and it's inevitable we're going to have one, they know that all I got to do is get to Fortitude Ranch without catching the virus. We do training on that. And by the app does too. There's pandemic scenarios in there too. And I won't spoil the scenario for you, but you'll have options like, hey, do you want to go to the grocery store and buy more food? That in some of these exercises, we track, you tell us how much food you've got, how much water, where you are, and the app keeps track of that. So if you go to the grocery store in the app and are successful, you can add, 30 days food to yourself and help you increase your odds of surviving. But if you go, it's probabilistic. If you go to that grocery store, one, you could get killed by a marauder, a looter at the store, and then two, you could catch the virus. So again, it varies. It's a random number generator when you do stuff. But you could go to the store, and then the next message you get is, congratulations, you were able to get 30 days of food. It's been added to your total. You got 30 days of food. And now, 3 days later, you get a message, we regret to inform you, you've got the virus. You're sick. And then an hour later, you get the message, we regret to inform you that you've died. You can keep playing the scenario, but you're officially dead, and you'll be logged as a death from virus in this scenario. So it's a really good training situation. It's fun, but you can't deal with this stuff just by talking in a podcast. No. You've got to have some training, you got to have some experience, yes. And that's why these exercises on the Collapse Survivor app are so valuable. That's what our military is. The reasons we kick ass, the U.S. military, isn't just because we've got high tech weapons. It's because we've got kick ass training, and it's through exercises. These simulations where we've done it. I mean, when we did the first Gulf War, we knew exactly what we were going to do because we gameplayed that over and over and over again. It wasn't like Schwarzkopf came up with a brilliant plan. He used a plan that we'd exercised and trained on in lots of tabletop and field exercises, and that's why we did it. So again, there are so many issues to deal with, and dealing with difficult people, that's another thing that can get simulated in the app. So dealing with it in training is a really good way to go.
Yeah. That's fascinating stuff. I've got one final question, and that is something that obviously recently happened, and that was COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts going into that? Did this thing play out exactly the way you thought it would? What could have we done differently? I just want to get your overall thoughts on it was the strangest part. Maybe you've had stranger parts of your life, but it's the strangest several years of my entire life. Yeah. Was this pandemic, just the way people reacted, the way the economy reacted, the way all these things. You obviously are prepared for that. You're prepared for these things. So again, when the thing started, what did you think was going to happen versus what actually happened?
Sure. Well, when the first reports came out, of course, we track it. We've got this Threat Watch Warning Center here. It's another part of our company. So we were on top of it. And there was an early study put out by the Harvard Medical School. And their estimate was, they said, COVID-19, the lethality rate of it is going to be much, much, much less than 1%. And they had a variety of reasons to make that. And it was a credible study. So we put out a report. And then again, that's why you want the app. The Fortitude Ranch warning alerts go out via the Collapse Survivor app. And you don't have to be a member if you have the app and you've paid the subscription fee. It's like $9 a year or $1.50 a month. If you're on that app, you'll get our threat warning. So we issued a warning to our members saying that This is not the pandemic we've been warning you about. This is a very low lethality. It's not going to stop people from going to work. This is not going to lead to a collapse. So Fortitude Ranch is not opening for members. We don't think this is going to lead to a collapse, and we were correct. And the worst disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic wasn't from the virus, it's from government overreactions to it.
Yeah.
But H5N1 is completely different. Again, COVID-19 lethality rate, 0.001%, something like that. H5N1, 50 to 60% lethal. And there's different variants of it. Some will be less, but historically it's been about 50 to 60% lethal. And a bioengineered virus, someone that deliberately is designed to be high lethality and high transmissibility, is going to cause a horrible collapse. It'll make COVID-19 look like a fun period.
Interesting. Great stuff, Drew. I mean, I could talk probably for another couple hours, but I know your time is limited today, and I think we got the crust of it. But I want, for our listeners, I want to make sure they know how to get some of these resources. So the Collapse Survivor is an app that you can get from the Apple Store?
Yep, or the Android Play Store, yeah.
Okay, so that's easy. And then if they want more information, they can go to fortituderanch.com. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, correct.
And see a little bit more about what we've talked about today, and they can get a hold of you or somebody, and if they have questions. So this is very informative, and this is really interesting stuff. I appreciate it. Do you have anything else?
One thing I want to mention is I noticed that you were a reserve police officer, and I want to thank you for that. And we really need a lot more of them. We don't have nearly enough police officers, not nearly enough military or guard members to survive a collapse. We need a lot more people to be reserve police officers. So in your community, wherever you are, if you can recommend that, it doesn't cost a lot of money, but when you have marauder groups running around killing people, wouldn't you like to have a National Guard with a lot of troops in your area, a reserve police force that's armed that can be called up to save you? That's fantastic. The number of reserve police officers in the U.S. it's hardly any. So I really commend you for doing that.
Well, thank you. In Nebraska, the politicals, the police union is a little intimidated by us because they thought we were taking all their off-duty jobs, but I never once took an off-duty job. And so, unfortunately, it's just kind of frowned upon. I was at Fremont Police Department for 13 years, and we could only work 100 hours a year by statute. And so I was training more than I was actually working. But I agree with you. I think it's, I actually became a reserve officer after 9/11. I just got on the internet and said, what can I do? And so, magically reserve police officer. Well, I'm a criminal justice major. I always wanted to be a cop. And so it made sense. And, it was very rewarding. I think the way law enforcement is viewed in the last 10 years is despicable. And I personally know dozens of very, very good officers who just aren't in law enforcement anymore because they just
a lot of people retired,
and it's just terrible. It's terrible, but
it'll be worse than a collapse. A lot worse than a collapse.
It sure will. Well, I appreciate your time, my friend. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it.
You bet.